Hello, ninth grade. Today we're going to go over the correct answers for the classwork assignment that you completed on Wednesday, May 13th. So this is where you were given 10 different examples of logical fallacies, and you had to tell what type of logical fallacy it was. Okay, so let's get going. On the first one, I asked you, what type of logical fallacy is this? You should definitely not major in philosophy. My college roommate majored in philosophy, and she had to work in fast food after she graduated. Well, that one pretty obviously is going to be C, hasty generalization, because if you look at it, this is the exact definition. It's a conclusion based on insufficient or biased evidence. So you're rushing to a conclusion without enough evidence. So just because one person didn't find a good job that they liked because they majored in philosophy does not mean that every philosophy major is going to have that same experience. So that one is hasty generalization. Okay, number 2. What type of logical fallacy is this? I got the flu shot several years ago, and then I got the flu. Therefore, the flu shot gave me the flu. I'm sure you've heard this one before. This one is going to come in right there as post hoc ergo propter hoc. Okay, if you remember, the definition of that is a conclusion that assumes that if A occurred after B, then B must have caused A, which is not necessarily the truth. Just because one event follows another one chronologically does not necessarily mean that that event caused it. So, like, for instance, what a lot of doctors say about, I'm sure you've heard this before, people have said this, is that in that case, you were exposed to the flu from someone else and got it that way, or maybe it was even a different strain or something like that, because you can't get the flu from the dead flu shot virus. Okay, so that one would be an example of post hoc ergo propter hoc, which is the Latin, just basically saying that, this came first, so it must have caused the second, but that's not always true. There's not always a causation there. Okay, number 3, what type of logical fallacy is this? Mom, I know that my grades have gone down since we started online learning, but you said you were going to clean out the office, and you still haven't done it. So that one is pretty obviously the red herring, right? That's where you're trying to throw out that distraction there. Remember that red herring is a diversionary tactic that avoids the key issues by avoiding opposing arguments rather than addressing them. So instead of addressing the grades going down, the kid's like, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to do either. So that's a red herring. Okay, we've probably all used that one at some point. All right, number 4. What type of logical fallacy is this? No one should vote for candidate X because she has been divorced 3 times. All right, so in that one, I'm sure you could tell pretty easily. Instead of actually talking about why you shouldn't vote for this candidate, like what their policies are or things like that, instead, what are they doing? They're attacking the character of the person. So that's going to be ad hominem, right? Where you're going through and you're actually attacking the character instead of talking about whatever the actual issue is. Here it would be what their policies are and why they wouldn't make a good leader. Okay? Number 5, what type of logical fallacy is this? If GMC lets students wear civilian clothes once a month, eventually students will never wear the uniform again. Okay? That's another one that you probably identified pretty easily. That's going to be a slippery slope, right? Because remember, the definition for slippery slope is a conclusion based on the premise that if A happens, then eventually through a series of steps, Z will happen. So if we don't want Z to occur, we can't let A occur. So there would have to be a lot of steps in between, students wearing civilian clothes once a month to never wearing the uniform again. So that's basically what's going on there. That's that slippery slope argument. Okay? Next up, number 6. Which type of logical fallacy is this? We can either keep our Second Amendment rights or have our AR-15s taken away. And of course, the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. So that one is obviously going to come in as false dichotomy. Because false dichotomy is also known as either or, it's where a conclusion oversimplifies the argument by reducing it to only 2 options. Obviously, there's a lot of different options rather than, keeping AR-15s or having no guns at all. So, yeah, that one's oversimplifying the argument and trying to reduce it down into two sides. Okay? Number 7, what type of logical fallacy is this? If you don't learn to keep your room clean, oops, typo there, sorry y'all, you'll be kicked out of any apartment you try to rent, and you will wind up homeless when you are older. So that's a pretty dire prediction, isn't it? So once again, that's slippery slope. Just because you don't keep your room clean does not mean you're going to wind up homeless when you're older. There would have to be a lot of steps in between that for that to happen. Okay? Number 8, what type of logical fallacy is this? All people of that race are dishonest, so you should not buy from them. Pretty sure you spotted that one pretty easily. That is genetic fallacy, right? Because you're basing your ideas or your conclusion on the race of a whole particular group of people. So, obviously, racism of any form would be genetic fallacy. It is an error in logical reasoning. Okay? So, number 9, what type of logical fallacy is this? Band X is always at the top of the charts because they sell the most records. Okay, hopefully you identified that one. That is a circular argument. That's what top of the charts means, is that you're selling the most records. So you're just restating the same thing. Circular argument is when you restate the argument rather than actually proving it. And that's what that one did. All right, then number 10, what type of logical fallacy is this? I didn't braid my hair into 2 braids for Raiders and we lost the event. So I need to do 2 braids from now on so we will win. Okay, so on that one, and it could be any kind of sporting thing, like you have to wear a certain pair of socks, or you have to eat this meal before the game. I mean, we've all heard them. It ties into superstition. And so that one is another example of post hoc ergo propter hoc, saying that because you did this first, it caused the second thing. Obviously, how you braided your hair didn't affect whether or not you won the meet. So that is going to be that type of logical fallacy, as pretty much most superstitions are. Okay? So I hope going over those helped, and remember that we've got review days coming up. You have to look and see exactly what time your class period review is, but we're going to be reviewing on Friday and Monday for the test, and then your test over this unit, which began on April 29th, whenever we started phase 3. This unit has covered propaganda, it's covered the rhetorical strategies of ethos, pathos, logos, and then we just finished up by talking about 8 different logical fallacies. So that's what the test is going to be over. Okay? Have a great day.